Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harrison. Each week, I'm joined by hunky, hairy, huggable homos who love film to discuss a bit of movie news and review a film, either current or classic. With me this week, as usual, is my wonderful co-host, Jim Poliafco. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
We are unfortunately missing our third partner in criminal activities. Will Lindis is at Fantastic Fest right now, and unfortunately, because we had to switch recording days due to my crazy work schedule, we don't have a third with us tonight. So it's going to be just me and Jim, mano a mano, for you guys this week.
Will's off seeing a ton of movies with friends. I'm a bit jealous, but we get to hang out with the podcast crew. Which is, just me and you with whoever's listening in tonight.
Well, we've already got like 5 people listening in.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
Hey, everybody. Glad to have you with us. So this week, even though it's just Jim and myself, we are going to be reviewing The Magnificent Seven. So if you are in the mood for some Western goodness, we will let you know if we think it's Western goodness. But yes, Jim's making the question mark in the air. But before we do that, Jim, how do you feel about some movie news? It's been a little while since
it has been a little while. It's kind of hasn't been too busy a movie news week, but we picked out a couple of things we can talk about.
There's a couple things I think we can talk about. All right. Well, with that said, here we go. Some movie news. All right. So I will kick things off with movie news. And it's kind of, I don't know that it's a cheat per se. I mean, it's TV related, but I really want to focus the discussion on sort of DC and sort of its plans for movie versus TV, blah, blah, blah. A new clip from season 2 of Supergirl came out this week, in which, spoiler alert, Superman is front and center working with his super cousin to save a plane, spaceship, whatever, from crashing.
Hurtling to Earth. Oh my God, what shall we do?
Right? And Supergirl is like on the scene, and then Superman shows up as well. We get to see a little bit of him like as Clark Kent and Superman. And it's kind of a big deal because, the first season of the show, they wanted Supergirl to kind of stand on her own. There were little bits of cameos in terms of like text messages from Superman or like Superman's boots. Long story. Whatever. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this because it's getting a lot of buzz. So, Jim, you watched it just before we went on the air, right?
I did watch it. I am not a watcher of Supergirl, nor am I very much into the DC television universe. I watch the movies when they come out, but I don't know much about it. So I was watching it, and I'm like, what is this he's sending me? Is this like a new Superman show? I didn't exactly know what was going on. Then I remember hearing about it. So I'll just let you go and explain.
Yeah. I was like, Jim, watch this because we're going to talk about it. So at this point, Jim, I kind of want to get your quasi outsider perspective a little bit. We've been talking about how in the Zack Snyder films, Superman is such a downer. Everything is so dark and so like grimy and soulless, and watching this clip from Supergirl, everything is bright and airy and fun. So I was kind of curious, like, obviously TV budget versus movie budget effects aside, what did you think of some of the differences and how this character is sort of tackled here?
Yeah, this definitely swings the pendulum way to the other side of the spectrum from what we always say is the dark and gritty of the DC movies to, the Zack Snyder verse to, what we get in some of these TV shows. And this one, at least from the tone I got from this clip, it's like way lighter, way cheesier. I mean, they show up at this, and we're going to spoil this trailer. Now, I can't spoil the show.
It's all right.
They show up at this like spacecraft that's hurtling to Earth with these people inside it that are freaking out. They think they're going to die. They're going to take out a city. And Supergirl and Superman show up outside the craft, and they're like, "Hey, cuz, what you doing?" And they like hanging on the wing, and I'll push it up over here. You go behind and just take a huff and a puff and blow out that jet engine with your breath. It's like super, super cheesy, and I'm like, oh boy. I don't know, Brad. Is this like right up your alley? Like, is this something you like this way more than the other end of the scale, or what?
See, I think it's an interesting discussion to have because I feel like it's almost too much the other way. Yeah. I kind of like a balance between the two. And, I know you didn't really watch the first season of Supergirl, but the whole show kind of has some of those tones going on. There have been some more serious episodes where it strikes a bit of a darker tone. And I feel like when it kind of grounds it a little more like that is when it's been the most successful. But I was watching this and I was having like Super Friends flashbacks or something. Like at one point, Supergirl's like, "Hey, cuz, I think this is a job for both of us."
For both of us, yeah.
And even me, who's like, I love light, airy, breezy, beautiful Superman, Supergirl, whatever. I was just kind of like, ugh, really?
But they totally remove all the stakes. Apparently, this wasn't a big deal that this plane would have crashed into Metropolis or some other city where it was heading to. It's totally devoid of any stakes. Like, you knew the plane wasn't going to crash. Superman and Supergirl barely had to lift a finger to make this right. I don't know. Just I want some sense of adventure in my movies. I don't know.
So granted, it's a 2-minute clip from like a 2-part episode thing that he's going to be in. But I guess my question to you is, having kind of seen both ends of the spectrum, like where would your like cinematic TV Superman sort of fall on this spectrum? Like if you could make the character according to your own wants and needs, where would he fly?
Well, if the Snyderverse was like a 10 and what we just saw was a 1, mine would probably be right around 8.
Oh,
around
okay.
7 or 8. Yeah.
So
I want a little dark. I want to feel the stakes. I want to feel the tension. I don't want it to be all wisecrack. I mean, even some of the stuff I watch, like you watch The Flash, and I know you like that. Even that's like too cheesy for me in a lot of spots. I mean, there's a lot of cheese in that show. There's whole characters that I would totally rewrite in that show, but it's not my show. And a lot of people love that show. I think it's a beloved DC show. It's just not really up my alley. I would want to see something. I do like a show like what's the one that we watch? Help me out. Daredevil, right? Is that the one we watch?
Right.
That's kind of more along the lines of what I kind of like. I mean, I have my problems with the Daredevil show too, but yeah, take out some of the cheesy stuff, and that's kind of where I sit. So yeah, somewhere in between, but maybe more toward the Zack Snydery side.
Gotcha. So you want a lot of dark with a little bit of light, whereas maybe I like a healthy dose of light with a little bit of dark. I think I would probably come in somewhere around a 6, if that's the scale. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. I don't know. Maybe things will get better when we get to see more. And
I'm sure not all of Supergirl is like that clip we saw.
No.
I mean, that was just, I don't know who maybe they're trying to hook housewives or something into the show. I don't know what they're trying to do with that clip.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, well, we'll see. Supergirl premieres its 2nd season on Monday, October 10th. If you are a Superman fan, if you've been waiting to see him on TV again for the first time since Smallville, this is your chance.
You're excited, I assume.
I'm cautiously excited. I think as a preview clip, this was a little cheesy even for me, so I'm kind of like...
So based on what you know, is this all we're going to see of Superman? Is this one thing and then it's over?
No.
Bit?
No, he's going to be around for the first 2 episodes of the season at least, and then I think he's got some maybe other appearances that may be coming up. And I think they're working him into sort of the greater like DC TV universe, because all the shows are connected at this point. Supergirl has moved to the CW, and now like she's part of like the Flash and Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow. They're kind of all creating one shared universe for all of them with crossover episodes over every show. And, and that was really fun last year when Supergirl and Flash sort of crossed, and, Flash and Arrow are always crossing. So I think it could be really good. I just hope that it's not all fluff. Like I hope there's some grit there, maybe.
Why don't you start a podcast about a specific show on DC? Like, have you looked at that? Are there like tons of shows that focus on like a Supergirl show, podcast?
Oh, yeah.
Are there?
There are, and I listen to a podcast for like each one. Like my favorite one for the Flash is Flash TV Talk. They're really great. There's, think about how enthusiastic we are about movies and how we just kind of conversationally shoot the shit. Like they do the same thing. They're a really great podcast, but I don't think there's room in my life for another podcast.
They dive into some serious detail though on those shows.
They do. That's very true.
They pick those shows apart.
They go kind of deep. That's true.
Right.
But we do the same thing for movies sometimes. But that's the mark of a good podcast, I think. So, but I don't know. I'll listen from the sidelines. But anyway, Jim, what have you got this week?
Well, I mentioned it's kind of a slow movie news week. I typically, when I'm at a slow part of my day, I'll go on to a few websites. IndieWire's one, and Slash Film, and First Showing is another one that I visit. And this I love to watch trailers for movies. Except for kind of the big ones like Star Wars and stuff, I will avoid those. But this little film, and I do it because I like to discover these new smaller movies that are coming out that you might never otherwise hear about. They don't typically get trailers played, in front of other movies. It's the only way you really hear about them. And one that kind of caught my eye this week was a film from IFC Films. So it's an independent film. It's a drama titled King Cobra. And what caught my eye about it was it's got James Franco, Christian Slater, Molly Ringwald that star in this. And it's about it's a thriller drama set in the behind-the-scenes world of the gay porn industry. So it looks pretty amazing. I'm going to read off the synopsis about the movie, and then you guys can get a better idea what it's about. It's 2006. YouTube is in its infancy, and internet porn is still behind a paywall. Taking the stage name Brent Corrigan, a fresh-faced wannabe adult video performer, is molded into a star by Steven, played by Christian Slater, a closeted gay porn mogul who runs the skin flick empire Cobra Video from his seemingly ordinary suburban home. But as Brent's rise and demands for more money put him at odds with his boss, he also attracts the attention of a rival producer, James Franco, and his unstable lover, Keegan Allen, who will stop at nothing to squash Cobra Video and steal its #1 star. So this movie sounds really interesting. If you get a chance, check out the trailer. It's called King Cobra. I don't know how much they're going to show in regards to gay porn, but they do insinuate quite a bit with these guys that are on the screen. Doesn't look like we're going to see any bear porn action in this. This is pretty much twink porn, but it's something anyway. So I know there's a lot of bears out there that like the twink porn too. So it's written and directed by this guy, Justin Kelly, who did his first feature film called I Am Michael, which I'm not familiar with, but it might ring a bell to some of you folks. This movie is going to be released in select theaters at the end of October. And then we can start looking for it this fall. Maybe it'll pop up in independent, in smaller movie houses, or even video on demand. But it looks really interesting. I love pretty much everything James Franco does. Christian Slater's great. We haven't seen Molly Ringwald in a lot of stuff. Alicia Silverstone is also in this. So I think, this one looks pretty good. It's definitely not a big budget movie. It's not going to get a lot of a lot of marketing. It's an indie, and so I'm kind of looking forward to this one. It's been put on my radar, so check out the trailer if you have a chance. Brad, I know you probably didn't get a chance to watch it, but
well, I have a question. So, is there like a discussion we need to have with James Franco?
Oh, that discussion's already been happening. Not necessarily with us, but I know it's out there. I mean, he touches on a lot of projects that that are tangentially have either gay themes or a gay connection. And there's been a lot of talk about his sexuality and stuff. And I don't know. I don't know where he falls on this. I don't think I really care at this point. If it comes out later that he's gay or bi or whatever, I mean, that's all cool. I just like the guy, what he does. I like that he takes chances with the projects that he works on. I really kind of fell in love with him over Spring Breakers.
Right.
When he really showed kind of how when he played Alien and, how he could stretch himself. And he's not afraid to put himself out there. So,
well, we'll have to see how he can stretch himself in King Cobra.
Yeah. He's not, he's an older dude. It's interesting to think about him as, he's an older dude, so you're not going to see him in front of the camera in King Cobra. He's a porn producer, not a porn star. So.
Right. There's a difference, but it kind of is making me think back to Interior Leather Bar, if you remember seeing that, Jim. Which is funny because we were just talking about cruising over the weekend. The movie, not going cruising, although we're always
we kind of talked about that a little bit too. When we were up on that lookout, guys were kind of milling around.
Yeah, except we were up there for a gay wedding. We're all trying to find this wedding spot up on a mountain, but to an onlooker, it looks like all these gay bears just like walking around through the trees, like looking around for dick.
Not cruising at all, but that's what it totally looked like.
But yeah, so it's making me think back to Interior Leather Bar, and that was very interesting. More graphic than I thought it was going to be. Like, I won't describe it here on our mostly family-friendly show, but I'm like, whoa, there are sexual things happening. So given that this King Cobra movie is a small kind of indie flick, kind of makes me wonder how much of that we're going to see too. And Jim, you had mentioned twink porn earlier. We have some listeners who are not necessarily plugged into the community as much as others, and maybe wondering what twinks are. So Jim, since you used the term, I'm going to allow you.
Wow, thanks a lot. You're going to
describe what you mean by twink porn.
Twinks are usually, twink typically describes a body type, a gay male body type, usually thin. If you think of like a swimmer's build, or somebody who's smooth, has either shaved or smooth body, not a lot of body hair in normal places like chest and back and legs and arms. Usually young, cute, young looking, smooth, thin dudes who have sex with other dudes. That's what I would say a twink is. Did I miss anything, Brad?
No, I think you got it. And I don't know, that term has a negative connotation, unfortunately. To some degree.
And you're right. Maybe, it's a quick, easy, but probably not a very descriptive, way to describe the type of porn you're looking at.
But I think it gives you a quick mental image of like what the look and flavor of King Cobra, right, is probably predominantly going to deal with. So I'm interested in this movie. I'm definitely looking forward to it coming out. What's the release date on it, Jim?
It's going to get a limited release in some theaters starting October 21st. So
okay,
probably by the end of October into November, we might start seeing this pop up in other markets besides like New York and LA.
Gotcha. Now, does the name of the porn studio, Cobra, have anything to do with spitting snakes?
I'm sure it does. That's exactly what comes to mind. Cobra Video.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, sounds like it could be interesting. We'll have to see when it comes out. Get it? Comes out.
Oh, boy. Taking it there.
See, without Will here to like balance out some of my punniness, our show has a different flavor this week. A little bit of a different feel. In any event, hey, we have a movie to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
Imagine that. Imagine that. So here's what I suggest. We will talk about the movie, totally spoiler free, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Give us some initial thoughts for anyone who might be on the fence about seeing The Magnificent Seven, and then give fair warning before we go into our super spoilery review for anyone who might have already seen it, want to stick around. How does that sound? Jim, are you on board?
I'm on board. It's what we do.
It's our format. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
We'll go as unspoilery as we can at first and then dive into spoilers. But since this movie's been basically made twice before, we probably could still spoil some things. So we'll steer away from that.
Let me say this. I haven't seen either of the previous two versions of this movie, so it would have spoiled me.
Yeah, well, it's probably true for a lot of people. Maybe haven't, because both of the previous ones were made quite a while ago.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, that said, here we go then. Our discussion of The Magnificent Seven. All right. So, Jim, why don't you give us the basic setup and your thoughts as to whether people should check this out in theaters, wait for rental, or skip it entirely?
Yeah. So what we have is The Magnificent Seven. It's basically a Western, and it's a straight up Western shoot 'em up kind of movie. This one is actually a remake of a remake. The first movie that it's a remake of a 1960 movie with the same name, The Magnificent Seven, directed by John Sturges, that was made in 1960. And that's a great year, by the way, 1960.
You may be a little biased there, Jim.
So it's been, 40, 50, 56 years, right? Since that movie came out. Wow, that's crazy. That was also a Western, very much in the same vein as this movie. This one's just been modernized a little bit. And in fact, the original Magnificent Seven was a remake of a very well-known movie by Akira Kurosawa named Seven Samurai. So they took a samurai movie named Seven Samurai, and from 1954, John Sturges remade it in 1960 into a Western cowboy shoot-'em-up movie. And now director Antoine Fuqua, who made Training Day, Olympus Has Fallen, Southpaw, has now remade The Magnificent Seven obviously with a new cast. And we'll talk about some of the story differences and stuff, maybe in spoilers. So let me just quickly give you a synopsis of what the story is. And here we go. 7 gunmen in the Old West assemble to help a poor village against a savage robber baron villain and his thugs. And of course, this is a theme we've seen many, many, many times, right? Not just in Westerns. We've seen it a lot in Westerns. We see it in sci-fi. We see it in comic book movies. Hello, Avengers assemble to save whatever. We see it in war movies. So this is something we see all the time. So the question is, does this film take what we have here in these Western themes and give us something new at all? And so my answer is disappointingly no. I don't think this movie really gives us anything new thematically or story-wise. And I think being a remake, it feels like that the filmmakers felt very hemmed in by its predecessor and didn't really want to break out of that mold and do anything different or surprising. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some things to like about this movie, and I want to talk about those. Definitely lots of, this movie has a high body count, I will say. Not with not a lot of gore. I think it's a PG-13 movie or something. There's a ton of killing in this movie, but there's just not a lot of gore, which is kind of weird when you think about it, given what the body count was in this movie. In this movie, the Magnificent Seven is made up of Denzel Washington. Denzel is the leader of the Magnificent Seven, and that similar to what Yul Brynner was for the original movie. So we've got Denzel Washington, we've got Chris Pratt, we've got Ethan Hawke, we've got Vincent D'Onofrio in this movie, and can't think of the Skarsgård that was in this movie, and he plays Peter Skarsgård plays a villain in this movie. So it's got a very, very high-powered cast. In the end, I mentioned there were some things I liked about this movie. I think the movie feels a little thematically limp and hemmed in. I mentioned that. It didn't really do anything with it. It definitely diversified its cast a little bit, and we'll get into some of those characters that it brought in. But however, the movie doesn't really delve into themes of race or even like the futility of violence, which I would expect it to, or standing up for what you think is right. This movie was like a straight up the middle, bad guys, good guys, who's going to win, and that's what you get. Denzel Washington's performance, I think, is something definitely to see this movie for. The execution of the action scenes, especially the climactic action scene near the end of this film, was very entertaining for me and kind of brought me back around to this movie. So between that and I thought the movie looked pretty good. It looked some of the scenes were amazing. The cinematography and some of the stunt work and camera work during the battle scenes I thought were fantastic. So that Denzel, I think this one I'm kind of on the fence about recommending. So I think some of those things that put it over the top for me, and I can give it a mild thumbs up. So that's where I'm going to end up on this movie. But I will say again, and I've mentioned it again, I've mentioned it before in the show, if there's one Western-themed modern movie that you need to get out and see, it's a movie called Hell or High Water. Go see that one. If you had to pick between the two, see Hell or High Water, but this one isn't a bad one. It's entertaining in spots. I think it's a little too long. Probably could be cut down a bit. But there you go. A mild recommend for me.
All right. Well, I definitely have a lot, I think, that I agree with you on. One of the things that you called out that I just want to start with is the length of this movie. I think that this movie is easily half an hour too long. There's like a certain part in the film, we can talk about it more in spoilers, where it's like you're between big action scenes and it's like, oh, look, heavy character moments. This is really good. But it's like, okay, all right, I got somewhere else to be. Like, can we move on with this? Like, can we get to like the next big action sequence? And I'm a big character guy. Like, I like those moments, but it just felt like maybe we could have spread those out a little more just to make the movie more even, instead of just having sort of one big, like, 35, 40-minute section of them. It just made it a little ponderous for me. And, maybe I was kind of sleepy anyway because we saw it at night, but I just was like kind of snoozing a little, I won't lie. But overall, I actually really enjoyed this movie, and Western films are not my jam, yo. I am not a fan of Western movies, never have been. My dad was into spaghetti Westerns, and bless his heart, I'm glad he likes those, but I could not stand watching those as a kid. So when you guys were like, oh, Magnificent Seven's coming out, we should totally review that, I'm just like, fucking shoot me now. Really? Do I have to watch this movie?
Well, if your dad ever comes over, he and I will have to watch some spaghetti Westerns while you watch Supergirl.
Hey, you know what? That's fine by me. You guys knock yourselves out. Whatever. You have fun. But something that I do want to touch on with regards to this movie and the whole spaghetti Western thing. I don't like spaghetti Westerns. I think the cast had a lot to do with it for me in terms of why I enjoyed this movie as much as I did. I've always been a big Denzel Washington fan. I think he's had some really, really fantastic roles. This one, I don't know. I mean, he does great in it. I wouldn't say there's anything necessarily new or groundbreaking for him in this role, but he does it well. I think he does a believable job of sort of wrangling these different folks together and keeping them sort of on track and focused. I think a big standout for me in the cast is Chris Pratt, who, Chris Pratt kind of plays Chris Pratt in everything he does. But that said, he was funny. He was entertaining. He had a nice reddish beard and a cowboy hat and was very fun to look at throughout the movie. So maybe that helped too. But I do like sort of this like cocky Han Solo, like swagger, sense of humor sort of quality that he has. And Jim, I think in the car last night on the way home, you were like, oh, he was just Star-Lord in a cowboy hat with a revolver. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, okay, that's pretty true. But you know what? He does one thing and he does it well. So
and the guy from Jurassic World too.
And the guy from Jurassic World. That's right. Yeah. But you know what? I'm going to give him a pass. He was a really entertaining part of this movie for me. It was great to see Ethan Hawke. And again, I kind of avoid trailers if I can help it. I don't read a lot of movie blogs because I want to go in unsullied. So I was actually surprised to see Ethan Hawke in this movie. I didn't realize for some reason he was going to be in it. And I was like, where's Julie Delpy? Like, is she going to be his love interest in this movie? I was let down by that, unfortunately.
No, Julie Delpy. No, you didn't get her.
It could have been like, what would we have titled the movie if this were like a Richard Linklater movie? Would it be like,
I don't know,
Before High Noon?
Yeah, that's right. Before High Noon.
Anyway.
That would have been great.
Terrible joke. But
before the bell.
There you go. Something. But you mentioned a diversification of the cast. So I didn't see either of the original movies, so I don't really know like what the makeup was. But I did enjoy seeing Lee Byung-hun play Billy Rox here. He's sort of the guy that's paired up with Ethan Hawke. His backstory is that he's kind of a
knife expert,
like a knife assassin-y kind of guy. Definitely sort of a Asian assassin.
Not a ninja. Not a ninja. Kind of like
not a ninja.
a poor man's cowboy ninja.
Right, but an assassin. We also had Martin Seinsmeyer playing Red Harvest, the Native American character here, and we actually had two. There was like the good guy Native American and the bad guy Native American, and
right.
Oh my gosh, are they going to square off? Will these two forces of nature be pitted against each other? Tune into spoilers to find out. But I thought that was interesting. And then Vincent D'Onofrio. It took me a minute to realize that was Vincent D'Onofrio, but I liked him here. I don't think I understood like 5 words of what he said throughout the whole movie. But he was also fun to look at. He plays this like older trapper character, and at one point he's even like referenced as a bear in the movie, which I thought was that was the
only laugh I heard you utter in the whole movie.
That's not true.
When they called him a big old bear or something.
I chuckled at some things, but I was like, yep, he's definitely a big old bear here. So, but
big old bear whose voice hasn't gone through puberty yet.
Right. But that doesn't but that doesn't matter if he's not talking.
It's weird. Yeah.
As long as we're hanging out and he doesn't have to talk, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I probably just made like 50 people hate me, but I'm used to it. I also want to talk a little bit about Haley Bennett, who played Emma. She's sort of the female force, right, that initiates this whole thing. Like, evil businessman comes to town, kills her husband. She wants what does she say? She wants righteousness, but she'll settle for
vengeance.
Because Denzel Washington in the trailer, I went back and watched the trailer, and he's like, "So you want vengeance?" And she's like, "No, I want righteousness, but I'll settle for justice," or whatever the fuck. So she was like the only girl, right? In like the whole principal cast.
Basically the only female cast member, yeah.
Only female cast member. And I guess
that got a speaking role.
Right. I mean, there's plenty of women in the background who are, not part of what's going on. But anyway, great cast. I think there's a lot of really good performances here. Even Luke Grimes, who plays Teddy Q. I was like, who is that guy? I know I've seen him before. He was the friend of Emma's. It was like,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Turns out, babe, we saw him in 50 Shades of Grey. He plays Anastasia Steele's best friend, Elliot.
Oh, wow. That's a very memorable role.
Right? I'm like, okay, I don't know why.
You always want to be that third guy in a two-hander. You know what I mean?
Oh, goodness. I know. But the action sequences in this film really held my interest. And again, with Westerns, they typically don't. Oh, look, we have a shootout on one street at high noon.
Main Street. These towns only had one street.
Barrels are blowing up, and it's like, that's so boring to me typically. But the way that this was shot, the inventive use of the different set pieces that they have, there's multiple levels of things going on. There's some really cool visual shots that are set up. There's some really interesting things they do with like tracking as people are moving rather than like
horses and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That just made this, such a delight for me to watch. Plus the scenery, in terms of just the natural setting right there. It looks like New Mexico or maybe a part of Arizona or Utah or Montana. I don't know. Hard to say. But it's just sort of a breathtakingly beautiful area. But I found myself, Jim, I don't know if you were, I found myself counting the drone shots. Like, I'm like, yep, that was done by a drone. That was done by a drone. Oh, really?
But they didn't have drones back in the early cowboy days.
You're right, but they could still film this movie with a drone. This isn't time travel, Jim.
I know. Seems like time travel.
In any event, from someone who Westerns are like not really my jam, my thing. If you enjoy action movies, if you enjoy some pretty strong dramatic performances, if you enjoy Chris Pratt with a beard and a cowboy hat, definitely this movie's a recommend for me. If none of those things sound appealing to you, though, I'll be honest, I would probably stay home, maybe rent it, but probably pass. So for me, I mean, I think it's a recommend from someone who doesn't typically like Westerns, but mileage varies.
So you mentioned shooting locations. I just quickly looked it up. It was filmed in both Louisiana and in New Mexico.
Okay. So I got the New Mexico part right.
So now the original Magnificent Seven, not Seven Samurai, but Magnificent Seven was filmed in Mexico, and the new movie was filmed in New Mexico. Get it?
Oh, that's awesome. Jim, real quick before we go into spoilers, I did want to talk a little bit because you actually went back and watched the 1960 movie. So
I did.
Obviously, without going into spoilers, like, is this kind of a big update? Is there a lot that's changed, or?
It's definitely a big update, but they didn't change much of the story. They did change the characterizations of the seven main characters, and because they're definitely not, I mean, the diversity was not there in the first movie. It was all pretty much white dudes that were the seven. And in here, and I want to talk about that a little bit too, is they tried to throw some diversity of characters in there. You mentioned Martin Sensmeyer, who played the Native American, who was the guy who played Billy Rocks. It's Byung-Eun Lee, who played Billy Rocks, the Asian knife assassin. And then you had Manuel Garcia Rolfo, who played Vasquez. So you had some degree of course, Denzel Washington, right, who played the lead character. So you definitely had some diversity in the actors. The problem is that the characters the diversity of the characters did not really factor into the movie very much at all. Other than the Asian guy was good with knives, and the Native American guy was great with arrows. We didn't really. I mean, and the thing is, Brad, you talked about how the movie dragged when they tried to get into some character development. It almost feels like wasted time because we didn't really get the character development that I think this movie would have been better for. It just kind of spun its wheels and didn't give us anything. So, yeah, I guess I give it credit for trying to do the diversity thing, but it didn't really carry that through all the way. So I wish it had. But as far as comparison to the original movie, definitely a different thing. I think the charisma that in the previous movie that like a Yul Brynner brought to the screen at that time, Robert Vaughn was in that movie. A guy named James Coburn, who was amazing, was in that movie. Eli Wallach was the bad guy. So they just brought a lot of bigger name actors, I think, even to that movie, and they did a better job with the character development. There are minor differences in the plot, but nothing really big. It's still these 7 guys are hired to good guys, quote unquote, good guys are hired to come in to a town, protect the townspeople who are getting bullied by a villain and get rid of him. So that is all the same. But yeah, if you have a chance, if anybody has any interest in Westerns at all, if you haven't seen The Magnificent Seven, it's definitely one you have to see. It's one of those milestone pictures. I didn't see Seven Samurai, so now I'm going backwards. Right? I watched this movie. I've watched the original Magnificent Seven, and I am going to go back and watch Seven Samurai, even though Seven Samurai is like 3.5 hours long.
Cool.
So yeah, but it's Akira Kurosawa. I've seen a couple of his other movies. He's was a great filmmaker, and so I want to see that one. But yeah, I talked about the diversity. It's too bad they didn't follow through with that. Otherwise, yeah, I think this movie's fine. It's just it just kind of feels a little bit limp, like character-wise. I think it needed a little bit more.
All right. Well, interesting. Well, spoilers. I think we can get into them briefly. I don't know that there's too awful much to spoil, but if you value your innocence with regards to the plot of this movie, now is your time to step away for 15 minutes or so, and then come back for plugs at the end. If you are listening on digital tape delay, if you were dialing up this show a week from now, a day from now, 3.5 years from now, bless your heart for checking out our back catalog. Go ahead and refer to our handy dandy time index in the show notes. Skip ahead appropriately.
All 200 shows in our back catalog.
Hey, I tell you what, we're on episode 201. It almost feels like we've started over again.
Yep, we're into our third centennial, whatever it is.
Right? Definitely. And a 4-year anniversary coming up in December, which, by the way, holy crap, December's going to be here in like no time. Can you believe that? October is just around the river bend. So, yeah.
Ooh, just around the river bend. Oh, one of the things I want to talk about this movie, I know we're getting into spoilers, but the soundtrack in this movie is pretty lame compared to like the original soundtrack the movie soundtrack from the original movie, which is an iconic piece of soundtrack. You know, it's got that da 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 da. You know, and it's got that Western theme going on, which a lot of movie composers these days try to emulate without copying. These guys didn't really succeed at that. So what did they do in the credits? They put the original soundtrack over the credits, which was kind of cool. I thought we would listen to that on the way out.
Definitely, yeah. I think the last movie I saw with a great spaghetti western soundtrack was The Good Dinosaur.
The Good Dinosaur, yes. If you think about that theme and the theme in The Good Dinosaur in that part of the movie, anyway, there's a definite influence there.
Nice. All right. Well, very good. Spoilers are officially fair game. Where do you want to start, Jim? What do you think?
Well, I will say, I mean, you talked about comparing this to the original movie, and maybe I don't know if I want to spoil the original movie in saying how how it hits some of the same beats and comes to some of the same basic conclusions.
Sure. Well, we can set that aside then and just talk about this movie. That's
it's
totally
interesting.
fine.
Well, yeah, it's interesting how in this movie, like some of the 7 don't make it through the gun battle. You'd expect like, oh, all 7 people get together at the end and have a big laugh. Ha 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 ha. You know, we killed, but that's not what happens. I mean, there's some serious stakes in this movie. They take on a big gang of villainous henchmen, and you know, some of our heroes get killed in the end. And I think that's pretty bold for a movie like this. You don't see many Avengers movies where like 3/4 of the Avengers are killed off. Like
that's because they have fucking superpowers or amazing technology, Jim.
Well, I know, and that's don't get me started on the you know, the weak stakes in comic book movies. I mean, these guys are dead. They're buried in the ground. They show it at the end, you know, the grave sites and so yeah, I kind of like that about Westerns. When people die, they typically die for good. And you know, say what you want about Westerns, but
well, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of an issue with that because like how many times did Chris Pratt take a fucking like gunshot wound to the chest and fall down and he's dead? 10 seconds later, he's standing back up again, crawling forward. He's dead again. Like, we did it like 5 times before finally he's close enough to like share some smoker's etiquette, like lighting each other's cigarettes before death and then lighting his TNT and throwing.
Well, because he was the jokester. He had to tell more jokes, right, before he died. No, but you knew. I mean, you knew that he was dying. He was not getting out of that situation, and you knew those stakes were there. And so, I mean, that's okay. It's when characters die, and then you have this whole grieving process. Other characters in the movie recognize that he's dead, grieve for him, and then all of a sudden, either next movie or 3 scenes later, there's some magic formula that brings him back. You know, that's different, I think, than a long, protracted death.
Well, one thing I will say about the deaths is it kind of made them a little emotional. Obviously not Chris Pratt's death, but how quick some of the other deaths were. Like Vincent D'Onofrio's character, you know, he got shot in the chest like by 3 arrows or whatever, and he's still trying to move forward. But like when he dies, he just kind of slumps to the ground in a sitting position and like he's gone. He's not like laying down dramatically. There's not like a character standing over him like mourning him. He just fucking sinks to the ground and he's gone. Same way with like you know, the Ethan Hawke character and the Asian assassin of awesomeness, the AAA, I'm gonna call him. You know, when they hit the bell tower or whatever with the Gatling gun and they're blowing things up, like they're just gone. They're just snuffed out. Like there's not a long protracted like, oh, I'm dying, let's have a last moment. It's just okay, boom, they're gone. And it was interesting that it didn't give me time to grieve for them on my own before we're moving on to the next like action sort of beat. And in a way, it reminded me of like Saving Private Ryan, you know, that World War II Normandy sequence at the beginning, right? Because it's like you've got these characters, you're kind of getting to know them a little bit, right? Just so that you care about them enough. But then like they're dying and you don't really have time to process it before someone else is dying and all this stuff is blowing up around you and happening. So I actually really like how that was handled. It was a little weird at the end when all of a sudden they're like, oh, Denzel Washington, we'll take good care of your people. And he's like, okay, and just rides away. Like I kind of expected he might, I don't know, have a moment, you know what I mean? But like he rides off, the other 2 guys ride off with him, and then the townspeople bury our dearly departed members of the Magnificent Seven. Was that weird to you at all? Like after this whole movie of him bringing them together, he didn't even care enough to stay for their funeral?
Yeah, there was a weird lack of compassion, right, for these. I guess they really didn't never really bond as like a family because you never got any of that emotion when each one of them or when the ones who were unfortunate enough to die, you know, their partners really didn't. I don't know. There was no reaction. It was kind of strange. was very strange.
Yeah, definitely bizarre. Very, very weird that there wasn't more of a, I don't know, moment there.
Right.
But
right.
yeah.
He almost had more of a moment when he, when he was killing the villain, right? Bogue, the villain. He that was when we saw the most emotion out of Denzel's character, Chisholm, who was a really great character. I mean, Denzel, like when he gave people that stare from under the brim of his and he just slightly raised his head and you could see his eyes. Those were cool moments. I mean, he did a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot with nonverbal stuff in that movie, and I mean that's what great actors do.
Yeah, he was very expressive with his eyes, which was kind of interesting. I think you had asked last night, Jim, if he was like, if his character was on something, because his eyes are always like.
Oh no, you were talking about. I'm sorry, you were talking about. I was talking about Denzel.
Oh, I thought you switched over to Brogue or whatever.
No, I said when Denzel killed Bogue.
Oh,
that's when we saw the most. That's when we saw the
Gotcha.
most emotion from Chisholm's character.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I agree with that too. Denzel definitely brings some subtle eye / nuanced goodness, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish we'd have got some of the backstory earlier in the movie, though. The whole, apparently the guy like raped his wife and killed his sisters.
Right.
I'm like,
find out till the very end.
Right. And I'm like, what a coincidence that, he just happens to be there when this guy who, destroyed his family is doing his thing.
Well, I mean, at the beginning, when the girl comes and tells him like who she wants him to take out, she asks him, like, do you know him? And he says, well, he said something like, oh, it rings a bell or something like that.
Yeah.
So you don't, I don't know. It's very subtle and you probably wouldn't know what's going on, but you could maybe guess that there was a history there. Right.
I suppose. Hey, real quick, part of my mix-up a moment ago was I was distracted by some total hotness. Paul Alderete, a friend of ours from San Antonio, is watching the show.
Who watched the movie tonight, by the way?
Who saw the movie tonight. He is all snuggled up in bed. This is Paul, snuggled in bed, watching the Movie Bears podcast on his phone.
Yeah.
Speaking of bears, look at that beard.
What kind of phone that is, but yeah.
I know what kind of phone that is.
Oh, yeah?
Anyway, I'm not gonna I gotta stop looking at this picture because it's distracting me even more. But Paul, thanks for sending that.
Thanks, Paul.
Good to hear from you. Always a treat. Paul.
One of the things about this movie that I thought, I mean, we talked about the diversity. I'm surprised they didn't bring the girl into the group. Like, I don't know why they didn't bring like a rough cowgirl type as one of the seven. I think that would have been cool. Like if they had a Jennifer Lawrence or somebody like that to come in and be a badass.
I was kind of expecting the female character to kind of become that, right? Like her husband was killed, she wants righteousness, and lo and behold, guess what? When Ethan Hawke's character runs away, she's like, "Oh, I'll take his place. I've been shooting with my daddy since I was a kid, and guess what? She's a crack shot." But like she, she kind of does that toward the end. But like it's not as, I guess, pronounced as it could be.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like in a way, I want them to subvert the demure weak girl turned strong girl in a Western sort of thing. But also I'm kind of like, shit or get off the pot. Like if you're going to do it, let's do it. I don't know. It just seemed a little weird to me.
I think they still had her serve them a meal at some point in the movie. Did she?
They did. She's like walking around with plates of food and like she's all like, "Did you want queso with that?" Like,
it was crazy.
Yeah, it was weird. Anyway, well, Denzel Washington gets his man in the end. Evil businessman is killed, but not by Denzel.
No, that's true. What we were just talking about, right? Yep. The girl, what's her name in the movie? Please help me.
Emma?
Oh God. Emma? Is it Emma? So I was thinking Emma Stone, but
No,
it's not.
Well, the actress is Haley Bennett, but the character's name was Emma.
Ah, okay. Yeah. And right, she's Emma. And she ends up shooting the guy dead, avenging her husband's death. Hey, Paul had a comment. I don't know if you saw it.
I did. I just saw it. Go ahead and read it.
Let me get back to it again.
Oh,
God.
I got it.
I got it. He says D'Onofrio, he's talking about Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays the tracker. I forget the tracker's name. Was way cuddly. Yeah, he was a big old like teddy bear, polar bear. Paul says he needed an obligatory like hot tub scene though. And I think what he means by that is like those old tin tubs that they had in the West where, you know, people would come and fill it with hot water. That would have been cool.
That would have been awesome.
We didn't even get that. Instead, we got his squeaky voice, which was kind of weird. I don't know why they did that.
Well, I think it was trying to, you know, because you see this
make
big,
him eccentric.
Yeah, you see this big, like burly trapper guy, like with a coonskin cap, and he's throwing axes, and you know, and like he has this very sort of high, weird, like almost like his voice box got damaged or something. It's not just that it's high; it's that it's weak. Like even when he's trying to like yell, like it just doesn't have much power to it. You know what I mean?
It's almost like he showed up on set. And it's like, okay, I got to make a character out of myself. And they came up with this weird vocalization that they're all like, yeah, let's do that. That's weird.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But yeah, I would have loved one of those scenes. Actually, one of the last Western movies that I liked was a movie from the 90s called Maverick. Did you see that, Jim? With Jodie Foster, Mel Gibson, and
I remember it, but I don't recall seeing it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
I know of it, but I didn't see it.
Gotcha. Well, I actually liked that movie. James Garner was in it as well. And there's this scene where like at the end, Mel Gibson and James Garner are like in these tubs side by side. They're naked. They both have hairy chests. They're both wearing cowboy hats. And I was like, huh.
That's like, I can get into Westerns though.
This could make me interested in this movie, you know? So I totally would have gone for like a recreation of that scene with like Chris Pratt in one tub and Vincent D'Onofrio in another tub. I'd have been fine with that. Just for the record.
Yeah. Yeah. I could totally see you getting into Westerns just because of that one scene.
If there was more homoerotic hot tub scenes in Westerns, I'd be all over them, guys. I'm just saying. Anyway, all right. Well, I think that kind of wraps us up for the Magnificent Seven. Jim, would you agree?
I would.
All right. Well,
yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, good movie. I'd say it's worth a watch if you're looking for something to see, or if you've seen the original and you want to compare that to the new one. I'd say it's that. Not a great movie, not a super good movie, just good enough.
Good enough. There you go. Well, let's get into some plugs. I will go first. Hey, one of my favorite movies coming out of South by Southwest, one of my favorite movies of the year, actually came out on DVD, Blu-ray, and VOD today, and that is Hunt for the Wilder People. Finally available if you did not get a chance to see it in its limited run in theaters. Guys, hands down, this is one of those movies, like, run to see this movie. Don't walk. It was so great. Loved it so much. I could talk a lot about why, but I guess I would just say go back and listen to a previous episode, or maybe we'll get to review it now that it's on DVD.
Yeah,
Blu-ray.
We could definitely have a media catch up.
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea. We'll figure it out. We'll figure something out. But anyway, Sam Neill is great in this movie. Definitely a lot of good comedy, dark comedy. Jim, would you say?
Yep.
A little bit.
Definitely. Edgy comedy.
Yeah.
But it's also got some heart too, and I think that's what makes the movie a little bit special. It's not just crack up comedy all the way through. It's got some heart, it's got some adventure, it's got everything, and that's why I like it. It's got a really good performance, a breakout performance from this kid who plays the role of Ricky, a real bad egg.
Ricky.
But he's like 11 or 12 or whatever, and 13. He carries scenes all by himself, and that's not easy to do.
It's not. Yeah, I'll be interested to see like what else is coming down the pipeline for Julian Dennison, who plays Ricky.
Right.
Because I mean, he was fantastic in this movie. Usually, like we kind of hate the precocious kids on the Movie Bears podcast.
Yeah,
but like in this case, he was really good. So anyway, Hunt for the Wilder People, now available. Check it out. Jim, what have you got this week?
Well, I've got one of my most anticipated movies of the year finally coming up. And I know our friends at Fantastic Fest, God damn them, we're seeing this movie tonight. So it's Shin Godzilla or Shin Gojira. This is the new, or Godzilla Resurgence. It's known by several titles, I guess. We're going to set it up as a Bowtop Movie Bears movie night. And we're going to go see it. Now, this movie is only getting a 1 week engagement at movie theaters here in the U.S. And as a matter of fact, in some areas like ours, we're only getting 2 nights and 1 showing each night. So that's 2 showings of this movie. That's it. We've already bought our tickets. We want to make this a Movie Bears event for our local Tucson Bowtop Movie Bears group. This is like the 3rd reboot of Godzilla, and it's brought to us by the Toho company, who's made all the previous Japanese Godzilla movies. It's got a blend of like man in suit effects and CGI effects, kind of like motion capture going on. I'm super excited for this movie. It's going to be on Tuesday, October 11th. And it's a 7 p.m. showing, but we'll have details on our Bowtop Movie Bears Facebook page. So check that out. That's BOTOP Movie Bears Facebook page. Check it out. That event should be posted within the next couple of days.
Awesome. I got to tell you, we got an email the other day with a link to a press screener for Shin Godzilla. And it has been all I can do not to watch the press screener, like at home. Like I really want to see this in theaters. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like,
explain why that is though.
Well, it's like I want to see Godzilla on the big screen. I want to hear him roar on like a giant, crazy, awesome surround sound system. I want to be with a group experiencing it for the first time, not just watching it on my couch with the cats.
With a big watermark across the screen.
There's that too.
Yeah.
With our like Movie Bears podcast email address across the middle. Like Godzilla is going to be like blowing fire, and it's going to say Brad at moviebearspodcast.com, like across the middle of the screen. Like that. Just, I don't know. I would rather wait, but I'm excited that we're going to set this up as a Bowtop Movie Bears night. But definitely, folks, if you're a Godzilla fan, I mean, they're rebooting the franchise again with Toho. Good place to jump on board. Jim, the director, what's his name? Eno, right?
Eno. I don't know the first name.
Yeah. Also did the Neon Genesis Evangelion series. So, Jim, we have a couple movies we need to watch.
We got to catch up on that too.
We do, definitely. But I'm really excited to see what he does with Godzilla because I fucking loved Evangelion. It's so good, and I love a lot of his sensibilities. So, very anxious to see this movie. Jim, I want to close this out with one question. If the Godzilla Resurgence / Shin Gojira Godzilla faced off against the new Godzilla from the Gareth Edwards Godzilla film, which would win?
Ooh, well, you got me. I'm going to have to defer that question until I see this new Godzilla, because I hear he's quite a force of nature. So, and he's got some things going on that probably haven't even been revealed to me yet. So ask me that question in like October 12th.
All right. Sounds like a plan. All right, everybody. Well, that wraps us up for this week. We will return next week with Will in tow. He'll be back with us. We'll be glad to have him back. I'm sure he'll have a few highlights from Fantastic Fest to tell you guys about. But In the meantime, have a great weekend. Have a great week. I guess you got to get through the week first before you get to the weekend. Take it easy. And next week, Deepwater Horizon or Miss Peregrine's. I don't know. We got to figure out which one we're going
Comment
to
to
do.
the show if you're really, really jazzed about one or the other.
Let us know. Maybe what we could do is like a double feature. We could do like Hunt for the Wilder People and Deepwater Horizon, and we could call it Hunt for Deepwater Horizon.
It's all about the title, I guess.
It is. We'll figure it out. Anyway, take it easy, everyone. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.